What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another season of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. We're here with season 4, episode 1. We've made it this far so far. Thank you all for joining me again, and welcome back. Sorry it took a little bit longer to get started with season 4 again, but I had a couple ideas that I was working with, and some didn't really work out with the people I was working with because, schedules. But maybe later on this season I can do what I had planned. But unfortunately, the idea I had when I told y'all last season just didn't work out right now. Maybe later on in the season we can do it. You guys will know what I'm talking about. But today, we're going to start out with a great conversation. Today, joining me is Kaytlinne Serna from Gray Moon over in Jawed. I know you guys know she joined me not long ago, but it was such a great conversation. She has so much to add to it that I couldn't help but not have her on the show today. So thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, of course. And for the people that don't know you or didn't see the episode or anything like that, could you give us an intro?
Yeah, so my name's Kaytlinne. I own and operate Gray Moon out of JAL. We're a micro cannabis business. We're fully integrated, and hopefully this year we'll be vertically integrated. But we operate down at the very southeast corner in JAL, and everything we have is here. We have our dispo, we have a manufacturing facility, so we have some of our edibles all across the state, and some topicals and a few of our other products. And then right now we're working on our grow and expanding all the other parts. So lots of fun stuff over here going on.
Nice, yeah. And you're expanding and stuff, and that's great to hear that you're really getting set down there because it's a competitive area you're in, and there's not many people in your town, but like there's a lot of Texans coming over.
Super busy, super busy.
Yeah, definitely. You're going to be busy for a while too. So, congratulations on all the successes and everything. But today I brought you on because, we want to talk about PPE. And, that's something that hasn't really been talked about a lot. If you guys don't know, it's personal protective equipment is what it stands for. But before we get into that, I'm gonna just get a really quick update from you. What's been happening since like October or something like that, in the past few months, and then we'll get into the conversation. So, well, what's new? What other than what you just told me? What are some of the updates?
So I guess since it's the new year, I think it was October last time we talked.
Yeah.
Relicensing's done. Go ahead and got some updates going on because NMED released some new rule changes, so have to adapt to those earlier at the top of this year. We are about to move my manufacturing facility that we've been in for the last couple years. We've been leasing, and we've graciously outgrown it. So we are moving over to where I've been in construction on my grow property for I don't know how long. And we're actually almost done with that project. So we should be moved over there by the end of February. So we're in a little transition phase right now, and having a lot of fun. We are finally about to get our greenhouse up. We got all of our polycarbonate delivered for the exterior. I tried to go the cheap way at first and do the plastic exterior, and there's no way.
Yeah.
Little tip: invest if you have a lot of wind. Just invest in the polycarbonate from the beginning, and you'll save yourself a lot of time, pain, and troubles, and especially money. So other than that, we're just moving. We've had people come in and out. We've had growth going on in the company. I'm actually looking for like another me type person, like a COO to come join our team. So I've been searching for someone like that. I guess everything and a little bit of nothing at the same time.
No, you got a lot going on. Yeah. And if y'all, are listening and you take interest to that position, please, by all means, apply. You guys are running a really great business, and, I couldn't help but, not help promote it for you. So, yeah, if you guys are interested in it, definitely apply for that position. That sounds like a great opportunity. Real quick, before we do move on to that part, you mentioned the NMED stuff, and actually, I did want to touch on that really quick, on the show. What are some of the changes that, you're seeing through them, that have happened, with the new year?
So there's just a few changes that have to do with labeling. If you're in the cannabis sector, you're probably going to be used to some of the labeling, but if you're just in the hemp sector, you're going to have to update your labeling. There's some things that they didn't used to require that they require now. One of the clarifications that we got on there is you can use symbols if they're approved. Like if there is I don't want to confuse anyone. Never mind, I won't go into it. But there's just a few labeling changes that you really have to adhere to. Some permit reminders and things for people that They have to do some people who didn't used to have food handlers cards now have to have food handlers. There's a few changes that have been updated that I really think that were necessary. If you're operating in cannabis, though, they really shouldn't be much different than what you're already doing. The labeling isn't going to be any more than what you're already doing, but if you're in hemp, you do have quite a few updates to make.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's just the tip of the iceberg situation, because there's a bunch of other stuff that's coming down, and a bunch of other changes and stuff. Even with we had that water hauling issue last year, and that's going to come up again this year, and it already kind of is with some people. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. Of course, the legislative session coming on, and we're actually going to talk about that a little bit later in the episode. But thank you so much for giving me the update, and talking about the environmental department. That's the NMED. It's not New Mexico Education Department. That'd be kind of funny if they had a change for us. But the New Mexico Environmental Department, they do have a say in New Mexico, because, like I said before, we took the plant, we separated it by definition, and now we have hemp and cannabis, and hemp is federally legal and cannabis is not. So the environmental department controls hemp, not cannabis. But you want to know what's in cannabis: CBD and other compounds that are found in hemp. And so by naturality, they kind of also have control of certain other things too. So the confusion gets crazier, is what I'm trying to say.
There's actually one update now that you say confusion. I don't know how I forgot about it. Super confusing. So new updates for CBD tinctures specifically is now you can't go more than 2 to 3 milligrams, I believe, per dose, and your bottle can't have more than 100 milligrams of CBD. So yeah, exactly. So same face, I made same thing. They're going backwards on regulating the CBD, and then I was on the training, and I asked myself, I was like, so what does that mean for any products that we're using with THC? Like, say for instance, for me, we have started producing tinctures and drops that have CBD and THC. Some targeted for pain and stress relief, and then we've got the ones with CBG that are coming soon that would be targeted for energy and stuff. Well, is that the same thing, since we're adding THC? And apparently it doesn't. Anything that is under that is added with THC, even though it's under the NMED department, doesn't follow under that rule. It's extremely confusing. But I got the clarification. If it's a CBD only product, yes, that's the rule, 100 milligram only. If it's a CBD THC product, it doesn't qualify for that rule.
So if it's naturally grown with higher CBD and THC, it's fine. But if you introduce a CBD product within a cannabis product, it's not okay if it goes over that threshold.
It's really just in relation to tinctures, and then it doesn't relate to selling it. So it's just for products manufactured in the state of New Mexico. You can buy a 1,000 or 5,000 milligram CBD tincture from out of state and still sell it here. Again, super confusing because all it's really doing is hindering hemp manufacturers.
Yeah,
Okay. I think I'm going to need you guys to go over that really slowly again. Because as an outsider, I don't think that makes much sense on anything.
As an insider, it didn't make any sense either.
Okay, good. I feel better now.
We're both like, what the fuck? Like, it makes no sense at all, doing that, because, like I said, they've separated the plant to hemp and cannabis, and now this is what we end up with. And then the attack that we had on hemp last year, I said, this is a slippery slope, y'all, and we're going to find that out. And now we're in the finding out phase of that attack on hemp that almost happened here in New Mexico. There was a bill last year that was going to ban most of those products anyway, but the environmental department came in later and did it themselves outside of legislation. So that's how they actually ended up doing it, was through the environmental department and not through the legislation, which is just rule, which is easier to change. But I don't know how we're going to convince the environmental department that this is a stupid move to do. And just causes more confusion. Like, there's no reason to do this. Like, you're worried about a product that doesn't get people high, and you only want 100 milligrams on it. Like, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. There's already THC in the product because it's an adult product, and it's on the legal side of New Mexico. So why would you limit CBD in there, you know, like
Especially when it's the one that's literally proven the most to help the most. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like the
Research
inflammation. Yeah, like the amount of inflammation it gets rid of if I have an issue is amazing, astounding. You know, like it blows my mind, you know, how well the CBD salves work. You know, like I'm not a big user of CBD itself, but when it comes to the salves and stuff that I put on me, oh yeah, all day. You know, so yeah, it's totally it's dumb, you know, and it's really just going to hinder both industries, not just the cannabis, but the hemp industry for sure. So I hope that we can get some changes down the road with that. And it's not going to stop until we bring the plant back together. You know, with this whole rescheduling thing. Now people are like, "Oh yeah, cannabis is going to to be rescheduled." I'm like, if they don't separate it again by definition like they did with hemp, which I think they're going to do because they're signaling it to be called medical marijuana and not cannabis. And if they call it medical marijuana, that separates it by definition again. And we're kind of just left where we were. And so we need to bring everything back together and stop separating it, because now we're going to have Schedule 3, state cannabis, hemp, and then the traditional market too, all for the same plant and all controlled by many different government entities. And we're already seeing the craziness that causes. So thank you for that update and everything. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to find that helpful. I might actually clip that part about the CBD thing just to show everybody how dumb this is getting and to clarify with people so they know, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get in trouble for it due to this weird change, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you have until March, until everything is like, you know, they give you a little window. So you have until March to get everything updated, or any products that you can no longer manufacture off your, you know, SOP book and whatever. So.
Dang. Well, thank you for that, and I appreciate, you know, the update. I didn't get a chance to make that training. I had to work that day. You know, doing the hash stuff, I don't get to do as much advocacy stuff I want to do all the time. That kind of pisses me off, but it is what it is. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. You know, and yeah, if you guys missed that training, there's a little bit of tidbit for it. Is there any information online for people to check out? Do you happen to know?
I think if there is going to be, you can find it on the NMED website. But other than that, I know they were not allowing anyone to record it or anything like that.
It's so stupid. Yeah, that's the government being the government, man. Well, thank you for that, and we'll now move on to the topic that we actually came here for today, and that is the PPE thing. So I've talked about this before in the past, and I've actually talked about it several times on like my social medias and stuff like that throughout the years, because I've not only noticed this to be an issue, but it's been brought up to me as an issue even here in New Mexico. And it's been something that hasn't stopped or hasn't really changed yet. So it's telling me that the issue is either getting worse or just staying the same. And to me, I'm honestly thinking it's probably getting worse, because I go into places and very rarely do I see the PPE being worn. Most of the PPE that I see worn by employees is to protect the product, the customer and consumer, not the worker themselves. So that's one thing that concerns me. Is like, yeah, they're wearing a mask and everything, but that's to protect the plant. Outside of that, if you go look at the people doing the pre-rolls, they're dressed like you and I, and with nothing on their face and nothing to protect them whatsoever. Maybe they'll have gloves on, but again, that's to protect the product. So there's somewhere that we're missing a step here in the industry, and that is the PPE part. So what is your take on it that's been going on? Because I know you wanted to talk about it too as well, and I really am excited to hear what you have to say.
So I guess I have a little bit more background with PPE because of what I used to do before I pivoted to cannabis. So whenever I came into cannabis, I kind of already knew to ask myself, okay, what job hazards are going to be here? So what PPE do we need? Background, I came from the mining industry, and one of my main responsibilities was making, it's called emulsion for the plant, and that's basically the fuel that would make it run. So I made it so often, I still remember most of the recipe. It was like 6 drums of amine, 28 gallons of hydrochloric acid, like thousands of gallons of water, and we're making it on these huge platforms, and and we have a lot of different things that are involved, and we have to make sure pH is safe. And whenever you're working with hydrochloric acid, it's something you don't exactly not want to have PPE for. So
Yeah.
whenever I came from that sector and pivoted to cannabis, it's just one of those responsibilities. I asked myself, what would we need? And then I got the basics. And then after the basics, I asked myself, what else can I do to maybe figure out who would get me in trouble for this? So it was OSHA. So I called OSHA and I asked them, if there's any way they could come to my job site and help me figure out these hazards as like a new business. And that's a free service they apparently offer. It's OSHA Consulting. And for anyone who didn't know, whenever OSHA comes out to your facility to consult, they leave you with like a slip. And if OSHA inspection shows up, they're not allowed to be there and they have to come back whenever you're outside of your OSHA consulting window because you're still getting your stuff together. You can't be penalized if you've already asked for their help. So you can do that once a year. I really recommend everyone doing it. You give yourself a window where you're not going to be inspected, and you give yourself the opportunity to ask for guidance rather than ask for an apology and try to fix a fine. They come in and they help you. So they came in, and this was before I had actually contracted asthma myself, and they told us about a case in Colorado that had happened and that they were told about it, and they just wanted to let us know that this is something that is very real. With it being a new industry, we don't know all of the hazards with it. With us ending prohibition, we only know the longer we're legal because the long exposure starts to show itself. So I took that, since I had already at that point been getting, reactions here and there to what I would assume were pesticides or any other little thing, because I'm more sensitive on the skin. So we've always done either the coats, or I've told staff if they would like to do scrubs, we pay for scrubs, and then we do gloves, and we've always had masks. I'll be honest, with the whole mask thing with the pandemic, I never have and probably won't ever force the masks. We always just tell them the hazards associated with the job and leave it up to them. Kind of like, this is what can happen. Here's my inhaler to show you that this is what will happen if you don't take it serious. This is you're a grown adult, make your own choice. But at the very beginning, OSHA told us that, and then I realized it had already been a little bit down the line. And since I'm not really in the process as much as I was, I didn't think that I mattered. So I would still be going around from facility to facility, coming in to help whenever. And I realized I started having trouble breathing too. So I actually contracted asthma from it myself just because of the pollen. It's repels water, and that's all we are. So rather than smoking it, whenever you're inhaling it as a combustible and as smoke, it's not sticking to the inside of your lungs like it sticks to your bong with water. You can't clean your insides whenever you're just inhaling it all day. And I don't think people realize, whenever they're in a processing facility, if they're packing pre-rolls with something that bounces, how much of that goes into the air. Whenever they're throwing it into a commercial grinder, how much of it goes into the air. Whenever they're in trimming rooms and it's getting thrown and chucked and thrown into a bucket, how much of it is going into the air and how much they're breathing in. So we really had to know early on, and then I had to deal with the side effects myself and turned into our own on-site, worst case scenario, or not worst case, because then we talk about death, because that is going to be the worst case scenario. But
it's happened.
Yeah, and it has happened.
Unfortunately.
So we try to just make sure that everyone's aware and everyone knows how I am with it. And we remind everyone as much as we can, especially whenever we do get in big supplies and big drops. The outdoor stuff is definitely going to give more people issues because it's surrounded by other types of pollen, not just cannabis pollen. We tell people, if you have seasonal allergies and you're allergic to ragweed, or you're allergic to Bermuda, or you have all these kinds of issues, you're going to have issues in the manufacturing cannabis part of the industry. You're going to need to wear your PPE. Again, can't force you, but we highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah, and those are all great points, and some of those I was going to make myself and talk about, especially the difference between inhaling a plant matter versus a combusted plant smoke. Granted, we shouldn't be smoking anything, but it's totally different from. There's a reason why we don't snort cannabis, for a few reasons, and that being one, it's not good for you to inhale plants like that. We're used to eating plants when it's like broken down, crushed up, or whatever, and it's usually put into something wet to kind of get the flavors out. So it's not like we're just crunching on plants all day like that. So it makes sense, and I wanted to point out that people have died because of this. There was an incident a couple years ago, I think in 2023 in Massachusetts, or 2024. A girl actually died. She got asthma from working in doing pre-rolls, and then she died from that asthma later on in the hospital. That day or a couple days later, and that's unfortunate. And now there's probably going to be lawsuits due to that because she wasn't even. They didn't even tell her that there was a risk on top of it. You're at least telling them, hey, there is a risk associated to this. They're just like, whatever. And you're even offering, the PPE. Over there, it was just they didn't care and they didn't know. And a lot of times, I would say a lot of times, there's sometimes you run into mold too when it comes to cannabis. You and I both have seen mold with cannabis. And one of the stories I know, and this is from a defunct company, High Horse, when they were running, at the very beginning, I knew a couple people personally that worked for them that were getting respiratory infections because of the moldy weed that they were putting into pre-rolls and stuff like that. And then people went off and smoked it too on top of it. So it was double gross. Like not only were they in an environment with mold spores and these plant particles everywhere, they're also packing it for customers and patients to use. And so we run into stuff like that, and we need to not only protect the consumer, which they weren't doing, we need to protect the employees, which they didn't care about. And so they're no longer with us anymore, the company, and it's probably for many reasons, not just for for the fact that they didn't give employees proper PPE. But I know personally that I have known many people that have had that issue, and to be honest, it doesn't stop at the manufacturing area, even in grows, in the grow rooms. They're using sprays, they're under those intense lights. Having sunglasses, something that simple will protect your eyes later on. Like whenever I'm doing cannabis business stuff, my sunglasses are always with me because I never know when there's going to be a chance where I'm going into a grow or I'm going outside to a field or something, because we process cannabis into rosin. So I'm in and out of grows all the time, and I got to make sure my clothes are clean so I'm not attracting stuff. I try not to go to more than one farm a day so that way I'm not cross contamination. And there's times where I even feel like I need a mask in certain grows that I go in because some of them aren't the best kept. And so even me, just as a dude visiting, I understand that I have my risks too, because some of the stuff that they spray on those plants ain't the best, even though it's allowed. You know what I mean? So there's many other places where we can kind of talk about where the PPE should be. But if it's something that you spray that you normally don't breathe, or it's something that gets on you that shouldn't be there, you're going to need PPE in that kind of situation. That's probably like, I know common sense isn't common, but that's the best way to put it for people that have a hard time with common sense. Is if it's not supposed to be inside of you or on you, you don't want it on you, you're going to need to give them protection. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, thank you for that and everything. And what are some other things that you've been finding out throughout the years of being a business owner and trying to figure out this PPE situation?
Honestly, I think whenever we brought OSHA into the situation and they really broke down like a job hazard analysis and how, I mean, everyone and for almost every procedure that you do should have a JHA. And once you just run down those things and you get ahead of it, you hopefully don't have to be reactive. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be you're absolutely right. There's going to be a whole lot of stuff coming out about the PPE. But I'm really not going to have to worry about it because I'm already taking care of that stuff now. I don't know if it matters that we're a small business and we're in it, but we do care about our employees. I don't want anyone to get as sick as I do. I don't really think it matters if you're like a big corporation. If you're a big corporation, you can afford to get the PPE and make sure that the people that are on are being taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think not waiting until it's mandatory is going to be better than waiting for someone else to tell you to do something. There's nothing wrong with too much PPE. I mean, whoever got hurt with too much sunscreen, Yeah,
right. Or who's ever gotten hurt from wearing sunglasses in a bright area? Like it only helps you out. It's only going to prevent things. It's not going to make it worse. So that's a great point. Because a lot, even I know there's going to be people watching is like, well, I grow organically. Well, you still have to add amendments that, are organic that could harm you. There was a guy who actually, I believe, died because he was in a room with too much bat guano, and the bat guano gave him a respiratory infection and he ended up passing away from something gnarly. So just because a plant uses it doesn't mean that it's good for us. And to be honest, you're putting it on the dirt and it's getting wet, so it's not staying in powder form or dry form, this whole time. So the hazards exist all over the industry. It's pointing them out because I can guarantee you in 10 years we're going to have that commercial. Have you worked in the cannabis industry for any company? You may be entitled to compensation because you weren't provided proper PPE or education. And a bunch of companies are going to end up getting sued, either going out of business. And hopefully by then we have legalization federally, so they get some kind of protection in that sense. But you guys need to start now. It's better to start now than wait for when, like you said, it's forced on us or it's required. Why wait then? Because the issues are already starting. That means the issues have got so bad that they had to go in and change it through some kind of legislation or rule change. When you could have just done it yourself and have no headaches in the end. Because if you're getting sick, more than likely your employees are getting sick too. And some of them don't even tell you they're getting sick because they can't miss a day. They need the job or whatever. So they'll show up sick and they'll show up, sick as a dog and die on your floor, and you don't need that. So thank you for those points there. And I hope people watching, especially the business owners, I hope you all take something from this and maybe reflect back on your own businesses and point out to yourself where you may need your PPE, because this isn't something that's going away or going to change. We're only going to need PPE more going further in the industry now that we have actual data saying that yes, being in a place with plant particulates is bad for you and you're going to need something to protect you. Or being in a grow room with high intensity lights is bad for your eyes and you're going to need something to protect you. Or spraying said pesticide, yes, is legal, but it's still not great to be on your skin. You're going to need some kind of protection. So I hope that you all take something from that. And thank you so much for mentioning that. I had no clue about the HIPAA thing, the OSHA thing, where they can come and consult with you, because that's huge and that's a free service. And usually we're used to the government, the CCD or whatever, being very standoffish with us. And I get it, the CCD is not allowed to consult us. But this is the one rare chance where the government is allowed to do that, and they wish and hope that you do. So if you guys are listening, do that now, because they can go and tell you where these issues are versus you having to think about it. And these are people who do this for a living, so why wouldn't you want to listen to them? So thank you for that and everything. Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I just wish that would open up the conversation for CCD to do that. Offer that help if they're so behind. Have a few people on staff that are getting people caught up before you even inspect them. You don't have to deal with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially if they're going to be reallocating funds, it's a pretty good time to consider that.
Yeah, 100%. Because we're making a lot of money in the cannabis industry, and I get most of the money goes to the general fund when it comes to taxes. But they do need a push from that general fund to get some more to do that, because I don't know if they don't want to consult due to legal reasons or whatever the reason may be. I do think it'd be a better idea for the CCD to consult us versus tell us to do it, us try to figure it out, us screw it up, and then they get mad at us or we get fined because we didn't understand, what the mission was. It's better for them, like OSHA, to come give you a list, fix it, and they can't even do anything until you fix it or till that period's over, and then you can go. And to be honest, that'll only make you a better business. Like why wouldn't they want to do that? So that's a good point, and that's something that I'm probably going to start bringing up more as well too. Is why can't we, have them consult us more, because they're the ones overseeing this. They should consult us what they want to see. Like we can't fix what they want if we don't know exactly what they want. So
if they want a relationship with us, that's a really great way to open that relationship. I mean, why wouldn't someone want a relationship with OSHA or CCD? If it was offered, I would have already called and asked. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just to open that door and hey, Brent, OSHA inspections here. Am I okay? Just to have someone to be able to refer to, and it's just a nice little tool to have.
No, it is. And what's up?
Well, I was just wondering about that, because we talk about the OSHA stuff, which takes a lot of safety in different businesses, but I'm sure that they have protocols and PPE for normal grows for the agriculture department. Is that something that the CCD can actually take a look and say, okay, if you guys are doing this with these plants or plants in general, because people growing other plants, from onions to chili and stuff, have to deal with pesticides and other stuff, and all the PPE that goes out that, even indoor stuff that they're growing. I mean, aren't those policies that they can follow there? And I know when it gets to manufacturing, when you harvest and you start breaking down those components, that's a whole other different thing. But then that would be something where the cannabis industry itself has to regulate itself, and maybe somebody should come up with some standard operating procedures that have to do with your PPE when you get into those manufacturing situations. If they're not going to do it, maybe get a group in the industry that get together and put those rules together.
No, and
Maybe,
you
and
can, because whenever I called them, I had different appointment and inspections for the different facilities, because one was retail and those occur different hazards than manufacturing. And he
Correct.
told me when everything was up at cultivation, to please call them again, and they would walk through the agricultural hazards and stuff that they already have down for cannabis that I'm assuming they're adapting. They already have, OSHA at least already has some of those practices there, because
Wow.
they're ready for us to call them and ask. So
Mhm.
call OSHA. I mean, like you said, it'd be a great place to start, because they do. I know that's one of the first people I'm planning on calling as soon as we have our little COO, and be like, hey, can you get down here now and help me come and make sure that we get this going right? It's just better
Yeah.
to do it from the beginning.
Yeah. 100%, and to do it right from the get versus trying to fix it later on, because you're going to be fixing a bigger problem than you started out with. And it's going to be a bigger headache too. Trust me, it'll be a way bigger headache later on.
And they love to help. They're very
Yeah.
nice. I mean, they're willing to explain why they're making you do those things. They go into depth. It's more of a learning experience, if anything.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And if you don't mind, I'd love to get some updates, throughout the year from you on that. Just tag me on a post or something, and I'll share it out, because that's something that a lot of people, even including myself, didn't even know about, and that's something important. And I'm going to use that service for myself now too, because it only makes sense. And, getting ahead of things is the best way to go. And the way I think about it is, I come from the computer world. I'm a IT guy. I got my associates in IT, build computers and all the good stuff. So when I build a computer, I'm building it for the future. I'm not building it for now. So every component that I'm putting in there is going to be a little bit more pricey and a little bit more powerful, because as time goes on, computers get weak because what we're creating gets stronger. So I need a computer that's going to be able to handle that in time. Well, you need to think about your business in the same way. Okay, what's coming down the pipeline? What issues am I gonna be experiencing? And that's one reason why I like having you on the show too, because you think ahead, not just 5 steps, sometimes 10 steps. And that's the difference between sticking around and struggling. And that's something that has shown time and time again. So I appreciate that. And that I was thinking to myself, I was like, this is why I brought her on again, because she knows what the fuck she's talking about. And she does do her due diligence to make sure that she's doing the right thing, and even more. You're not forced to contact OSHA and do all this. You're doing it on your own. And that's something that it needs to be shown in the industry. Is like, yeah, if you're not forced to do it, you can still do it. And it's going to make your life a little bit better. And in the future, once federal legalization comes, you're going to be set. And you're already setting yourself up for success in the future. And all should be gunning to do the same thing, not just trying to get the bag today. The bag today will be the bag tomorrow, but if you don't do it right, you're not getting the bag tomorrow. So, but thank you on that. Exactly, right? So thank you on that great conversation, and some great tips, especially for me and the rest of the industry. And I do hope that the CCD does eventually do that. But I honestly hope that cannabis production moves away from the CCD and goes to the Department of Ag, because that just makes more sense. They already run the hemp industry on the hemp side when it comes to growing. Why not give regular cannabis to them? Because it would just make sense, and a lot of the fuckery, as I like to call it, will stop when it comes to the confusion with CCD and growing and stuff, because they're not ag people. They're just trying to run an industry, but they need help, and why not get it from the plant nerds over at NMSU? So
It is,
again,
after all, a plant, right?
right, it's a plant.
It's a plant. They like the planties.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And is there anything else that you want to talk about before we go on to our last topic?
No, I'm good. I agree with you though. I mean, they offloaded the edibles and the topicals over to NMED. So yeah.
Why not take it to the place where it should be?
Makes
Like
sense.
take some burden off of the CCD. They're already overworked. So maybe in the future we can look for that, but it ain't gonna be during the 30-day session. And speaking of the 30-day session, let's talk about the legislation session or legislative session brief right now. So there hasn't been any pre-filed bills that are related to hemp or cannabis as at the time of recording yet. Usually there isn't. In most sessions, they usually don't start getting introduced until the session starts. Last year, no cannabis bills were introduced. I think until like almost the second week of the session. Now it was a 60-day session, so we have a little bit longer. We're dealing with a 30-day session. So for those of you that have been watching this show either last season or since the beginning of the season, this is going to be boring to you. But here in New Mexico, we have a 30-day session and a 60-day session. In a even year, we are on a 30-day session. In an odd year, we're on a 60-day session. I don't know why they do it. It's unproductive and makes no sense, but that's the way it works here in New Mexico. That's just how they run it. One day, I hope they change it so we can get more time to get more legislation through, because a 30 and 60-day session just is not long enough. I mean, Texas does theirs every other year, and it's like 6 months or something like that, close to that. And they get a long time, and it still doesn't seem like long enough. So, there's something that needs to change here in New Mexico, because the 30-day session, really all that happens is they focus on the budget bill. The budget bill, and that's how everybody gets paid and everything runs and functions in the state. So that's what they mostly focus on in every session. But the 30-day session, that's really the only time that they have. So if anything is going to be introduced for the industry cannabis-wise, it's going to have to be a very short bill, meaning one item issue bills. So an example would be, and I really hope this is something that we fight for, is lowering of the taxes. Our taxes are increasing by 1% every year. So this year it's going from the 13% to 14% in June, up from the 12% last year that it went up to. And it's going to go all the way up to, I believe, 16 or 17%. Now, this is before you add on the gratuity tax of the 8% or so, depending where you are in the state, the tax on top of it. That's why now it's 21% tax total, depending where you are in the state, and it's going to jump up to 22%. If we don't do something, it's going to be close to almost 30% taxes here in New Mexico at the end of the day. Now, we've seen from the other states, Michigan being one, that high taxes don't do anything but allow the traditional market, or the black market, some people call it, to thrive and to take over, essentially. And we saw that last year here in New Mexico by the taxes raising 1%. We saw a lot of people I wouldn't say get away from the recreational market, but some are starting to become weary because the prices are going up again, and it's not due to products getting better or anything else. It's just to taxes, and businesses felt it too. I think Cookies in Sunland Park I don't know if they're still doing it, but they were eating that 1% tax. So they were still giving their customers the same tax rate that they were before. And then, taking on the burden of paying for that 1% tax, which adds up. They make over $700,000 a month. So, that's about how much they're paying on, that when you add all the math and stuff. So, that is something that I hope gets done. It's only going to happen if that one issue is on the bill. If you introduce a bill that's too big and there's too much in it, it's not going to go anywhere, because we're not going to have any time. My worry is that, just like last year, they're going to be, and I'm saying they, just, people introducing bills, and some of the times organizations have lobbyists that help. They're going to be focusing on the wrong things like last year. Last year, they were focusing on the hemp thing, like banning hemp and, the synthesized and semi-synthetic, whatever the fuck. The wasted time. Nothing got done, and nothing changed for the positive for the industry whatsoever from the legislative session last year. This bill, there was a bill last year to lower the taxes, but it didn't go anywhere because they were too focused on the wrong things. And so I have a feeling that that's going to happen again, and I already have proof that certain groups that are around the state are going around wanting to add a 1,000-day moratorium on licensing versus trying to push the CCD to do what's already in the law, or the CRA, and lower plant counts. Because as you and I have discussed before, this is a supply and demand issue. The state already issued its supply and demand study, and the supply and demand study gave us a result and said that, our only real fix is lowering plant counts. Closing licenses may help temporarily, but will only make the consolidation even worse. And that's something that I've been telling people this whole time. I said, closing licenses isn't our answer, guys. Now, I get it at the surface level. It looks great. And having one dispensary in this area looks and everybody's happy is great, but that doesn't change anything. The customer is going to get cannabis regardless of where it comes from, either from a dude's house, that has a dirty couch, or the really nice dispensary that checks your ID and everything. They're going to get it, and I hope that there's no time wasted this session on something that the industry doesn't need and that only a few people are going to benefit from, because that's monopolization right there, and that's not going to help anyone. Like this last year, we could have all been happy with staying at that 12% taxes, and eventually in the future possibly lowering it even more, because cannabis is taxed higher than anything else in the state. Tobacco and alcohol wise, we are paying significantly more, because about a pack of cigarettes is about an ounce of actual product. We're paying significantly more on the ounce when it comes to that versus like cigarettes. They're paying like less than $1 or something. We're paying several. So I really hope that's something that comes from it. But other than really trying to get the taxes lowered and then certain groups fighting for the wrong things, that's the only thing I can really see happening. Now, one thing I do want to mention is Senator Cervantes last year mentioned that he would think it would be a good idea to raise the price of the licensing in New Mexico because it'll keep the bad actors out. Now, that's great on the surface level again, but in the end, all it does is keeps the poor people out and keeps the corporations in and rich. That's all that does. Texas right now, they're going to be charging people almost $20,000 for their hemp licensing out of a couple $100 that they're paying right now. And they're going through the same thing. And we already went through this in New Mexico. Like a lot of these issues that I'm talking about, I'm not talking about it because I'm guessing or another state went through it. We already went through most of this shit already. We had a monopolized medical program. It was very expensive to start, and there was no competition. So we've already seen this play out. It's just the people that are a part of the industry now weren't there for it. Some people, especially a lot of the people that are pushing for this, most of them weren't in the industry until we went adult use. That's why I'm like, you guys don't know that this is a bad thing because you weren't here. You're not listening to me because you hear money change. Like you're hearing the money drop on the ground, and you're not listening to what was actually going to help you in the end. Like, yeah, it sounds good, but it ain't good. Because I keep getting told by some people, like, well, there's a lot of people that don't want the plant count to drop. I'm like, there's a lot of people that don't want to freaking put gas in their car, but they have to. Like there's a difference between needs, wants, and have tos. Like I have to do something sometimes. Like I have to brush my teeth, or I'm going to lose them. I have to wipe my butt, or I'm going to get sick. Like we have to lower the plant counts because that's what supply and demand says. So I just really hope that's really what's going to happen. Sorry for the long-winded explanation and everything. I just try to get that out as fast as possible. Do you have any questions or anything to add to that?
No, I just agree with you 100%. Stopping licenses isn't going to do anything for anyone. The only thing that's going to fix anything is that highest tier of plants needs to be lowered. Like we have way too much supply. Like from a retail aspect, I've seen prices for a pound that are ridiculous. I mean, no, they're not quality at all, but it's driving down the market and it's squeezing out our micro producers so hard. And all they're going to do is wait for all of these micros to go out of business and all of the quality cannabis to exit the market because they can't afford to keep up with it. And then everyone's just going to be struck with trash weed that they're going to raise the prices on because then there's no one to say that they can't, and there's no quality competition. You can't just let price run the game. We have to get rid of some of the supply because it's not good supply.
Yeah. No, it's not. And that's the thing that bothers me. I get told by people, oh, you're only going to get like $10, $12 for your rosin now. I'm like, whoa, I don't make shit rosin, dude. That's for the really crappy rosin that looks like mud and doesn't taste like much. Like that's what you're talking about. Like the rosin I make, it's a different tier. And don't get me wrong, it's not the A+ whatever tier, but it's not in that group. I'll tell you that much. So yeah, it's affecting the craft quality people too, because now everyone's assuming that they're going to get that price that the lower end is getting, when that's not the case at all. Like I've been hearing about the $400, $600 pounds, and I don't know if you've seen or heard cheaper, but just hearing $400 pound. Oh Jesus, $250. So that worries me because that means one, you're dealing with terrible quality. and two, there's too much of an abundance. I actually got word that Swaz sold cookies, a bunch of their, like, they have like 20,000 pounds or something, some ridiculous number of an abundance of cannabis. They sold it to cookies, and that's what cookies is giving people away for free, to give away. I mean, it's a great tactic, a sales tactic, but that's what's happening because there's too much cannabis on the market. Like, it's just, you got to lower the plant counts. We're also in the desert. We can only grow so much. I mean, pecans take up so much of our water that, we can't grow 100 million thousand cannabis plants. We just don't have the water for it. And cannabis doesn't need that much water to start with. A lot of people grow cannabis wrong and they use too much water. Then that causes issues too. So I just hope that something good comes from this legislative session, and the issues that are needing to be fixed get fixed. But unfortunately, when I was at the legislature last year, they didn't want anything to do with us. I was getting laughed out of offices. It was hard for me to get any message across. They're on their mind was banhammer, being more strict and kicking people out, and by making it so expensive that corporations are the only ones that can. And that's unfortunate. And that's not what we want. We don't want that, and because we've seen that happen time and time again, and it doesn't work. Like, I get people want to get to that corporation level, but if you look at corporations, they go out of business all the time. There's scam schemes that go with them. A lot of the times they're just using loopholes to their benefit. When you see them, like, oh, this company went bankrupt, and sometimes they do that on purpose because of another shell company to protect them in some other way. So they're rich enough to pull these schemes and pull little strings where us regular people can't. And I think that's where the legislature gets hung up on, because they think everybody, especially in cannabis, has the funds that the big corporations have, when that is not the case whatsoever. Most of us are self-funded, doing this on their own, have no investors whatsoever, and we can't even get loans. So it's literally, a lot of us, especially on my team, even a lot of us have jobs, like, work full-time jobs and still have to do this stuff. So that shouldn't be the case, but it is, and you can do it. But that's the unfortunate truth of the industry and everything. And I hope that changes one day, and the legislature actually listens to what we actually need, and not listens to the very few people with all the money who thinks they know what we need, because what they want only benefits them and not everybody else.
Yeah, I wish they would at least listen to, like, the logic of the market capture of the taxes part. I mean, why would you want to keep increasing the price on a poor product? You know what I mean? Instead, you're just going to push them back to the black market when that's who we're competing with. This isn't, you know what I mean? I don't understand the method of it whenever there's other states that have proven lower tax rates captures more market. So they'd be able to get more money off of less tax rates. I'm just a little frustrated on that they can't even just put that little piece to see that we're going to lose customers to the traditional market by these yearly increases in taxes. And they're planning all of these budgets around this money that they're going to be losing.
Yeah. And that's actually what's happening in Michigan. The reason they wanted to raise those taxes were to help with roads or something like that. And what they don't understand is, raising the taxes, they're not going to make as much as they were, because people are going to be buying less and they're going back to the traditional market. On top of it, most other states, they allow the local jurisdictions to ban sales in the first place. So, and I say this all the time, but it's true, only 30 to 40% of cities in California allow cannabis sales in the first place. That means 60 to 70% of the California market is ran by the traditional black market, not by the legal market. So that's what happens when you do that. That doesn't mean that cannabis is gone. Cannabis is always going to be there and has been there this entire time. What you did is you just made the availability to somewhere else. You're giving the money to someone else, someone who doesn't pay taxes, like the dealer. He doesn't pay any taxes, and by all means, whatever. Like, I'm a firm believer that, tax is theft. And these days, it's starting to feel like more and more like they're robbing us, just blind, not just theft. It's like just being robbed blind because of how much we're getting taxed left and right. And in the cannabis industry, we already get overcharged. We already get discriminated by governments and other businesses. That now we have to deal with, just getting robbed from the taxes too on top of it. And every year losing more and more customers, and it's not even our fault. it's because the taxes keep going up, and it's not the customer's fault either. They're just looking out for the best deal for the best quality. I mean, like
Yep.
we all do it, but you know, you have to help us out at the same time. You know, we're not going to be able to compete with a traditional market that isn't taxed 26% at the end of the day when we're done with this whole thing. You know, the customer is saving 26% on top of all that. You know, like that's crazy. And I do tell people in New Mexico, get your medical cannabis card, so that way you don't worry about the taxes at all. And that is a benefit, but the taxes thing is going to have to change. And every time it's been brought up in the legislature, and I get told this too, it's like the lawmakers, they really don't want to let that money go, man. They're making a lot of money from cannabis and lowering it. They don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, we don't want to pay it, dude. Like, where do you guys not understand that? You know, like the customer doesn't want to pay that tax. Yeah, you guys like it, but the consumer doesn't. And that's who you should really be looking at the end of the day. And the business owners are trying to tell you all this, and they're not listening. So I kind of feel that if there's one thing that needs to be done at this legislative session, it's a taxes thing. And I really do hope that it's focused laser sight on that and really nothing else, because that's really what we need to fix to help us this session. We already have in the CRA that the plant counts can be lowered and need to be lowered. We have that study backing that up. What else do they want? So let's just hope that something good comes from the legislative session this year. It's only 30 days. Nothing cannabis has been introduced yet. Everything I'm talking about is either an analysis for me or kind of like a theory of what could happen in the future if said thing happens or goes somewhere. Lately, it's been hard to get cannabis bills passed through the legislature to get to the governor's desk, but we'll see what happens. So that's all I have for that part and for the show. Is there anything else you want to add to the conversation before we end the day?
No, I don't. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And thank you so much for coming on, dude. You know, it's always learn something when you come on the show. And it's always great to see, you know, an operator not trying to do the right thing, going over and beyond to do the right thing. You know, like it's not you're just trying to do the bare minimum. You're going far and beyond the bare minimum and thinking ahead of, okay, where else can I improve? And I appreciate that, because you don't see that very often here in many industries, to be honest, not just cannabis. So I'm glad you came on the show. Yeah, I know we got you on October, so we didn't get that great of an update, but I'll have you on again later this season. I'm sure you're gonna have some more great updates for me anyway, so it'd be great to have you on, you know, to get that. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And is there anything you want to say before we head out?
No, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Chad, don't forget that that invite to have her come in person is there.
Yeah. If you ever want to come in person, you're more than welcome. That'd be great to have you all in person.
No, I was telling him that I'll come in person next time later in the season.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we'll try to schedule that for like October or something like that. Or let me know when it's a little less crazy for you in the year, and we'll try to schedule around that.
Yeah, usually around there. Sounds good. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank everybody for watching this week. And welcome back to Ask Chad Grassy Logic for season 4. Make sure you like, subscribe, whatever you got to do to stay in the know. And I'm going to keep you guys updated on the legislative stuff this whole session. So make sure you follow my socials and stuff like that, because that's where most of these updates go, especially my Instagram stories. So I'll see you guys next week. And it's good to be back. All right, y'all. Shoots. See ya.
Wow.